Welcome to week 13 of the Advanced Sprint Distance Training Program. We are heading into a threshold block and we have now more than half of the training plan behind us, and hopefully you will feel that you have laid a very solid foundation of aerobic base and strength. So now we're ready to layer on some pretty challenging blocks of training with a decent amount of intensity until we get to the race. So to have you ready to peak on race day, or to be in a peak when you get to race day and perform at your absolute best in an intense race like a sprint distance triathlon. Of course, when we do intense work like we will be doing, recovering from the training and adapting to it is equally critical. So recovery will be baked in both as a full deload week in week 16, but also as a regular, very easy days each and every week of training. You will also notice that we back down on volume a little bit. So we were at 16 hours per week in the previous block of strength and stamina. Now we go down to 15 hours per week in this threshold block, but that can change. It can increase or decrease depending on how you use the adjustable duration workouts. But anyway, the default volume does decrease as intensity increases, so that we make sure that you recover from the intense training that you're doing. So over this block, these next 4 weeks, I should confirm that. Yeah, 4 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4. We will be doing, well, in next 3 weeks, we will be doing 12 workouts, so 4 threshold workouts per week. And then the week after, which is the deload week, we are only doing 3 easier threshold workouts. But this week we have two threshold swims, 1 threshold bike and 1 threshold run. And then we will rotate each week so that over the course of this week and the 2 coming weeks, you will be doing an equal amount of threshold swimming, biking and running. Some general things to keep in mind with threshold work is that it is probably the most common mistake to do when doing it is to doing the threshold work at too high an intensity above your actual threshold, which costs you a lot in terms of recovery and ability to do well in the next workout for no additional gain. So it's important to leave the ego at the door and do these workouts with consistent pacing and maybe starting a bit lower and building through the set to be able to come back strong the next day and the day after that, always knowing that you could have done at least 1 rep more if it required when you finish a workout. And the next thing that I'm going to mention is not for most users of this plan. Most users will want to follow the plan relatively as is, but for the power users that take this plan and kind of adapt it to their own needs quite a lot, if you want to do some progression when it comes to threshold work, you don't want to progress the intensity, but the total duration of work as well as the duration of intervals. So for example, instead of doing 10 times 4 minutes, you could do 4 times 10 minutes, would be one form of progression, same total work, but longer interval duration. And instead of doing 4 times 10 minutes, you could do 5 times 10 minutes. So that's a progression of total work. Or you could do 12 times 4 minutes, which is also a progression of total work, even though the intervals do become shorter. So that's how threshold work should be progressed, in my opinion, not necessarily the intensity, because your threshold intensity doesn't improve that quickly that you should week in, week out expect to put out higher power or better pace numbers. Really, really super important in this block to fuel the workouts exceptionally well. You will be burning through so much carbohydrate when doing threshold works. There's no exceptions there. That fueling it is super critical. But even in your longer and easier workouts, if you don't fuel them well, then chances are that you'll get to your threshold work and you will be just a little bit depleted. And just being a little bit depleted will be enough for you to not perform at your best in the threshold work. So fueling doesn't just count for the threshold workouts themselves, but also for the other longer workouts that you have in the program, even though they are not super long at this stage, because of course we're training for a sprint distance race, so we don't need to be doing 4-hour rides at this point. But yeah, those are all of the specific tip or non-specific tips, I should say, that I wanted to give you. Intensity control as well, worth mentioning. Keep the easy work easy enough that you're ready to perform in each of the threshold workouts. Now let's look at some specific workout tips The first thing I want to mention is when you do the LT1 work on the bike, it's better to be a bit conservative, better to be on the lower side than on the higher side, or I should say better to go too low than too high, because there is really not too low per se, but too high could move you into tempo territory, and then you would definitely have a different fatigue profile and fatigue time course, which wouldn't set you up really well for the intense workouts to follow later in the week. So be a bit conservative when it comes to pacing on the LT1 bike that you have. The threshold swims that we're doing, on Wednesday, we're doing 10 times 200 at threshold efforts of 30-second rests. And on Friday, we're doing 2 sets of 400 plus 3 times 200. So that would be, again, 2,000 meter of threshold work, but introducing some 400s. So yeah, the main thing to consider here is that you want to be pacing yourself really well. I have written here that T-pace plus 2 could be a good target pace, so you are going to be a bit slower than your 1,000 meter pace. That's that's definitely, because your 1,000 meter pace is definitely faster than your threshold is. But you want to be able to do these intervals consistently, so you shouldn't see a slowdown at the end. You should be able to maintain the same pace throughout the set, or maybe increase pace slightly at the end. So that's then you know that you've done it correctly. On the bike, well, those same main principles apply, but we're doing 8 times 4 minutes, and 90 to 100% of FTP is a reasonably wide range, especially if you have a high FTP, then it becomes, of course, bigger in terms of watts. So you can choose, and probably what makes a lot of sense, especially in your first threshold workout, is that use the first interval at least to be a bit conservative and ease into the workout. You don't have to go straight to 100, but go at 90 and see how that feels, and then you can take each interval from the following, basically. Did it feel good? Go to 95 the next one, and if that felt good, maybe push it to 100, but only if you think that you can maintain that to the end of the set. So again, you want to work at an intensity that makes the entire set sustainable, and still feeling that you could have done one or more additional intervals if needed. And that same principle, exactly the same principle, applies on the run as well. So, and here again, the main target to take is to do the work at 10K to half marathon effort. So care about that as much or more than you care about the pace targets from the structured workout. So 8 times 4 minutes at 10K to half marathon effort is what you're looking for. And those are all the things that I wanted to comment on workout wise. Other than that, you are familiar with all of the other types of workouts we're doing: the hill sprints, the speed work on the swim, the strength conditioning. All of that is important. Fueling and sleep as well. A reminder of that's super important as well. Good luck with this week, and I'll talk to you next week.